The alien rebel challenged humanity. He taught her a lesson she'll never forget. The stars were quiet that night, above Outpost Delta 7. The human colony stood on the edge of deep space, far from Earth and far from help. It was a place of peace and routine where the crew followed the same schedule every day. People worked in the labs, checked the scanners, ate their meals, and rested in their quarters. Life was calm, simple, and without surprise then. Something came from the sky like fire. Ship entered the atmosphere fast, like a spear cutting through water. Alarms screamed across the station, and lights turned red. No one had seen this kind of ship before. It was small, sleek, and dark, like a shadow moving through the clouds. The scanners tried to read it, but nothing made sense. It carried no known signature, and answered no calls. The commander of the station, Ryan Hale, stood in the control room watching the screen, his jaw tight and his eyes calm. He told the others to stay alert, but not to shoot. He wanted to see who had the courage to land without permission on a human colony. The ship landed on Pad 4 near the loading bay. Steam hissed from its sides as it touched the ground. The metal doors slid open, and the figure that stepped out made the soldiers freeze. She was tall, slim, and covered in smooth armor that shimmered like a storm. Her skin was silver blue, her hair black like night, and her eyes glowed with a quiet fire. She walked with the pride of someone who feared nothing. Her name was Zarai, and she was Corviante. Corviants were known across many systems for their power and pride. They did not bow, they did not beg, and they followed only their own law. They had once fought the humans long ago during the border wars. Since then, both sides kept away from each other. So why was a Corvian standing here? Now she did not wait for welcome. She walked into the base like it was hers. The guards stepped forward, but she looked at them with cold eyes, and they stepped back. Zarai entered the command center without asking. She moved through rooms, scanning the people and the tech with sharp interest. Ryan stood by the main screen and waited. He did not speak first. He wanted to see what she would do. She looked at him for a moment, then smiled, a small, dangerous smile like a knife hidden in silk. "You are in charge," she said, with a soft voice that still cut like steel. Ryan nodded once. "This is human space," he said. "You landed without request." Zarai tilted her head. "And yet no one stopped me," she said. "Strange for such a strong race." The crew stared from their stations. Some looked angry, some confused, and some afraid. Ryan showed no emotion. "Why are you here?" he asked. Zarai turned and walked slowly around the room. She touched the edge of a console and looked at the readings. "Curious," she said. "Just curious. I heard humans had grown soft since the war. I wanted to see for myself." Frian felt the tension rise. This was not a visitor. This was a test. She was looking for weakness. He stepped forward and blocked her path. "You will follow our rules while you are here." Zarai smiled again. "Or what?" she asked. "Will you call Earth and ask for help? You are alone here, human. Let us see what you can do without your chain of command." The room went quiet. Every eye turned to Ryan. He did not speak at once. He studied her face, her body, her stance. She was confident. Too confident. "You are welcome here," he said, "but you will not test us again. This is not your playground. It is our home." Zarai gave a short laugh. "We shall see," she said, and then she walked out of the room, like she had already won something. Ryan watched her go. He knew now what she was not just curious. She had a mission, and if he did not stop her, the colony might fall. He turned to his team. "Watch her every move," he said. "No one acts without my word. She wants to see how we react. We will not give her what she wants." Not yet. Outside, the night had grown darker. The stars above still shined, but the peace was gone. Something had come to test the humans, and Commander Ryan Hale knew this was just the beginning. Zarai moved through the halls of the human outpost with slow, calm steps. Her boots made a soft echo with each stride. The humans stepped aside when she passed. Some watched with narrowed eyes. Some whispered when they thought she could not hear, but none stood in her way. She smiled at this. She had walked into their stronghold without fear, and they had done nothing. Room stood in the command room. Again, watching her on the security screen, he had assigned a silent watch on her. 2 soldiers in plain clothes followed her, but kept their distance. She was smart, and he knew she had noticed. Still, she said nothing. She let them follow like they were no threat to her. She entered the training area without permission. She walked among the equipment with mild interest. She picked up a human-made rifle and inspected it. She checked its weight and balance, then set it down. She moved to the sparring mats, where 2 human soldiers were training. Without a word, she stepped onto the mat and faced one of them. The soldier looked at her confused. She raised a hand and beckoned him forward. "Come," she said. "Let me see your strength." The soldier looked around, but no one stopped her. He stepped forward slowly. He was young, trained, and fast, but she was faster. In 3 moves, he was on the floor, looking up at her with surprise. She helped him up without a smile and turned to the second soldier. "You arrived just in time to see the second soldier fall." Zerai turned and looked at him, as if she had known he would come. He walked toward her without pause. You are crossing lines now. This is not your ground. She stepped off the mat and faced him directly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Then stop me if you think you can show me your strength. Commander, the room grew still. Soldiers paused their training. Officers looked in from the hallway. Everyone was waiting. No one had ever seen someone challenge Ryan like this. He took a breath. He did not want to fight, but he knew he could not step back. She was not just testing the crew. She was testing him. You want to fight? Fine, you will have one, but it will be by our rules. He pointed to the clock. On the wall tomorrow morning, 0600. On this mat, no weapons, no tricks, just discipline, and Sarius. Smile, returned I. We'll be here, try not to disappoint. Mesh left the room like a queen, leaving her court. Ryan stayed behind. He looked at the soldiers. And officers, get ready, she wants to see how far she can go. She thinks we will break, we won't. Walked out and went to the private gym he trained alone. He practiced until sweat ran down his back and his arms ached. He knew she was fast. He knew she was strong, but he also knew something else. She was proud, and pride made people careless. The night passed slowly. Zerai sat in her quarters and meditated. She thought of the human commander. He was calm to calm. Most humans talked big and feared. Bigger, but he stood firm. He did not flinch. He did not beg. He was different. Strange, she smiled to herself. This would be interesting. Morning came. The crew gathered early. They stood around the training area in silence. No one spoke. No one joked. Everyone was waiting. Zerai stepped onto the mat. First, her movements were smooth and sharp. She wore light armor, but not enough to limit her speed. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Ryan as he entered. He wore no armor, just a standard training suit. His steps were slow and steady, his face calm. As always, he stood before her and bowed his head slightly. Are you ready? She gave a small nod. Always. The clock ticked. The room fell silent. Then it began. She moved first. Quick like lightning, a kick toward his side. He blocked it with his forearm and stepped back. She followed with a sweep. He jumped just in time and landed light. They circled each other. Waiting. Zerai struck again, a fist aimed at his face. He ducked and used her momentum to twist her off balance. She recovered fast, surprised, but not shocked. You are better than I thought, she said as they moved again. You haven't seen anything yet, he answered. She smiled and came in again, this time with more speed, more power, but Ryan stayed calm. He used her energy against her. He did not fight to win fast. He fought to control, and slowly, very slowly, she began to lose ground. The crew watched in silence, some eyes wide, some mouths open. The Corvian was strong, but the human was unshakable. The match ended without a single word spoken. Zerai stood still on the mat, breathing slow and steady, but something had shifted in her eyes. Ryan had not won with force, and she had not lost with shame. But deep inside, she knew the human had surprised her. She had trained all her life in the ways of Corvian combat. She had studied the weaknesses of many species. She had believed humans were easy to break, yet now she was not so sure. The crew watched as Ryan stepped off the mat and gave her a final nod. He did not smile. He did not boast. He left the room with the same quiet strength he had always carried. Zerai stood alone for a moment, then turned and walked away. No one dared to stop her or ask questions, but Ryan knew this was not the end, was only the surface. Zerai was not here for a fight, not really. She was here with purpose, and he needed to find out what it was. Later that day, Ryan returned to his private office. He opened secure files and called up data from the last few days. Ship logs, communications, station scans, and system activity. He wanted to see where Zerai had been and what she had touched. He knew she had not just wandered the halls for fun. She was looking for something, or she was planting something. He pulled up the footage from the day she arrived. There was one moment that caught his eye. She had spent 10 minutes in the communications room alone. She said she was lost. The officer had believed her. Ryan did know. Checked the room's logs. There was a hidden signal, short, small, and masked. It had been sent through a backdoor channel. Encrypted. Ryan stared at the screen. Now he understood. Zerai had not come to test his strength. She had come to test their defenses, and she had found a hole. He leaned back in his chair. The signal had gone out, but where he tracked the transmission path, it was narrow but clear. It pointed to a Corvian relay station, hidden deep in neutral space. She had sent them a message. Maybe a code, maybe a scan, maybe stood and walked to the control center. He called his top officers and showed them the data. The room was quiet as they studied the screen. This is a scout mission, one officer said. She's preparing something bigger. Ryan nodded. She wants us to react with fear. She wants to see how fast we've fallen. Other officers stepped forward. Do we detain her now? No, Ryan said. Not yet. Zerai walked the halls again that evening. Her face was calm, but inside she was thinking. The human had fought well, too well, and now she wondered how much he had guessed. She knew the signal had gone through, but she also knew it could be traced if someone looked deep enough. She returned to her room and opened a small hidden panel in the wall. Behind it was a tiny device, no larger than a coin. She activated it and watched a silent green light blink twice. The reply had arrived. Her people had received the signal. They were waiting for her next word. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Something inside her felt different now. The plan was simple: find the weakness in the human colony, send the signal, mark the path for the Corvian fleet, then leave, before questions began. But now she had seen something she did not expect. Ryan, his control, his calm power, his belief in his people. He was not like the humans in the reports. He did not break, he did not panic. He did not chase Gloria's eye. Felt a strange pull in her chest, not fear, not respect, something between them. Something uncertain. The next morning, Ryan walked into the research lab. He asked to see the planetary scans from the last week. He checked power spikes, signal echoes, energy trails. He found another clue, a second transmission, much smaller, hidden behind a power surge in the cargo bay. It had come from Zarai's ship. She had used 2 channels, not one. Ryan called his security team. I want that ship checked now. Every wire, every panel, every system. Do not touch it from outside. Send in the micro drones. As the team worked, Ryan stood outside the bay, watching, his arms crossed. His mind rushing. Zarai had tried to play a long game, but Ryan was closing in. She thought she had come to study humans, but humans had been studying her too, and now the game was changing. The drones moved like tiny shadows inside the alien ship. They scanned every surface, every crevice, every circuit. They crawled under panels and behind walls, invisible to the eye and silent to the ear. Ryan watched the data stream from the control room. The feed showed clean lines at first, nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, but then a drone picked up a strange heat signature behind a wall near the pilot's seat. It pulsed with energy like it was alive. Ryan leaned forward. There it is, he whispered to himself, though no one heard. The device was small, flat, round, and Corvian. It carried a unique power core that ran cold unless activated. It was not part of the ship's flight system. It was something extra, something planted. Ryan gave the order. Do not touch it yet. Trace it first, understand it. He did not want to scare Zarai. Before the truth was clear, the tech team isolated the signal path. The device had broadcast a pulse, low and masked, but strong enough to reach beyond the system. Another beacon, another mess. He was sure Zarai was not alone. She was the beginning of something larger, a test probe, a scout. Ryan stood by the window of his office later that evening. The stars outside twinkled in silence, but he saw something else now. He saw the shadows moving between them. He saw the threat growing. He had warned Earth Command already, but he knew help was far away, too far. If a Corvian fleet was coming, the outpost would stand alone. He turned as his second-in-command entered. Lieutenant Mara Chen, sharp mind, steady nerve. Sees hiding something more, Mara said. Zarai never stopped testing us. She walks like she's still in control. Ryan nodded. Because she thinks she is. But she doesn't know we found the beacon, and we're going to use that. He laid out his plan. They would not arrest Zarai. Not yet. They would let her believe she still had the upper hand. They would feed her false data, send her signals she wanted to find, let her report it back, but all of it would be crafted by Ryan and his team. They would build a trap from lies and bait it with human weakness. The next day, Zarai walked into the control room again. She studied the screens without fear. Ryan stood beside her, his voice calm. We had a small system breach last night, he said. Someone tried to access the defense grid. We traced it to an old maintenance port, not very secure. We shut it down. Zarai raised her brow slightly, but said nothing. Ryan showed her the screen, a false signal designed to look like a weakness, an opening in their defenses. Zarai looked at it with interest. She tilted her head just enough for Ryan to know she had taken the bat. Interesting, she said. Your systems are not as strong as I thought. Jan gave her a slight nod. We're still learning out here. Not every crew is trained for. Or Zarai gave a small smirk. Then perhaps someone should teach you. She turned and walked away, but Ryan saw the flicker in her eyes. The look of someone who had just found what they were looking for that night. She returned to her quarters. She activated the device behind the wall, sent a second signal. Brief, precise. Ryan caught it. His team traced the signal again. This time they let it go. They let it pass because it was carrying their false data. The trap was set, and now they waited. The next 2 days passed in slow silence. Zarai moved less. She stayed close to her room, watched the stars, watched the humans. Ryan noticed her eyes had changed, not soft, but no longer full of firewise. She doubting, was she thinking? He did not know, but he stayed ready. Then it came. The long-range scanners courted a small ship, Corvian class, moving fast, stealth mode. Engage. Deet. stopped near a moon just outside the system. Hiding in the shadows, Ryan called his officers. "This is it," he said. "This is who she was signaling. We hold position. Let them make the next move." Sarai entered the command room minutes later. Ryan turned to her. "We have a ship near the outer moon, Corvian signature. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" She said nothing at first. Then she looked at the screen, and her voice was cold. "Perhaps you should ask them yourself." The room filled with quiet tension as Sarai stared at the screen showing the Corvian ship. It hovered behind the moon like a predator in the dark, waiting for a signal or a mistake. Ryan stood still, his hands behind his back, his eyes locked on hers. The crew around them held their breath, watching the two figures in silence. Sarai finally spoke, her voice low, like a warning wrapped in silk. "You already knew they were coming. You were waiting for them, and you were waiting for me." Ryan gave no reaction, his voice calm like still water. "You sent them a message, and I sent one back. Now we both wait to see who makes the first move." Sarai turned from the screen and stepped closer to him. She studied his face, his eyes, his posture. He was unreadable. No fear, no doubt, no anger. She hated how calm he was. She hated how much he reminded her of the elder warriors of her own people. "You are clever, human. More than I expected, but cleverness will not save this place, not when the truth arrives." Ryan looked her in the eye and replied with steady weight in his tone. "Truth is already here, and it's watching youth Corvian ship outside." Made no move. It stayed hidden behind the moon, scanning, listening, waiting. Ryan knew it was a scout, like Sarai, but stronger. He believed it carried a decision-maker, someone high in the Corvian ranks. He believed this was more than a mission, it was a judgment. He turned to his team and ordered a full broadcast. No encryption, no secrecy, just one clear message across the system to the Corvian ship hiding behind the fourth moon. "This is Commander Ryan Hale of Outpost Delta 7. We know you are watching. We know you have received signals. This colony is not weak, and it is not unprepared. Any act of aggression will be answered with force." The message echoed across the speakers. Sarai did not stop him. She did not speak. She only watched. The next hour passed in silence. No move from the Corvian ship, no reply. Ryan stood at the window of the command room, eyes locked on the stars. He felt the weight of every heartbeat around him. Then finally a signal blinked on the screen. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a message. It was in Corvian code. Sharp, clean, efficient. Sarai stepped forward to read it. She said nothing as she scanned the lines, but Ryan watched her face shift. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Her lips pressed tight. Then she handed the tablet back. "They have orders to wait," she said. "To watch, to judge my success or failure." Ryan nodded slowly. "So this was your test?" She turned to him. "I was meant to find weakness, to see if humans had grown soft. If your colonies were scattered and fragile. And what do you think now?" Ryan Askegerai looked at him for a long time. Long enough that even the lights seemed to dim around her. Then she spoke. "I think your strength is not loud. It is not built on fear or rage. It is quiet, steady, and that makes it more dangerous than I imagined." Brian stepped closer, his voice lowered so only she could hear. "And what will you tell them?" Sarai did not answer. She walked out of the room and disappeared into the hallway. Ryan let her go. He knew now that the battle was not only between ships and soldiers, it was between minds, between pride and principle. Later that night, Ryan entered the training hall alone. The room was dark, except for a soft light near the far wall. Sarai stood there waiting. She was not in armor. She wore only a simple training suit. Like she had before, Ryan approached and stopped a few paces away. "Why are you here?" She turned, her face unreadable. "To finish what we started." She stepped onto the mat and raised her hands, not in challenge, but in respect. Ryan understood. This was not a fight of strength. It was a battle of meaning. They moved, not fast, not wild, but measured, like a dance of balance, and controlled strike was answered with grace. Each move met with calm. There was no winner, no loser, only understanding. When they stopped, both stood breathing, steady, no anger, no fear. Only silence between them. Sarai stepped back and bowed. Then she spoke one final time. "I will tell them what I saw. I will tell them humanity is not weak. It is not broken. It is not afraid. And maybe they will listen, maybe they will not, but I will speak the truth then." She turned and walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone in the quiet dark. The stars over Outpost Delta 7 shone with the same cold light as always, but something beneath them had changed. Inside the station, silence had settled like a heavy mist over metal and minds alike. Sarai was no longer walking the halls like a shadow with sharp edges. She had returned to her quarters without a word. After the final exchange with Ryan, the crew had noticed her silence. Her steps had slowed. Her fire had dimmed, but not vanished. It had shifted inward like a storm that no longer roared, but still lived. Ryan sat alone in the observation deck, watching the Corvian ship behind the fourth moon. It had not moved. It had not responded to the message, or to the silence that followed. It was waiting. Just like him, he closed his eyes and thought about the match in the training room. It was not just a fight, it was a message. One that only they had understood, one that neither side could explain. With words he had not beaten her, and she had not defeated him. They had met at the edge of pride, and pulled back without falling. He knew now that strength was not always seen in victory. Sometimes it was found in stillness, in patience, in restaurant. Sarai stood by her window, in her private room, staring at the same stars. She remembered her training, the drills, the speeches, the promises, the words of her elders who taught her that humans were clever but weak, that their systems were fast but shallow, that their strength came from tools, not from within. But those words felt like smoke. Now she thought about Ryan, his silence, his calm, his refusal to rise to her bait. He had not needed to prove his strength, he simply was. For the first time in her life, Sarai felt something that her people never spoke of: respect, not based on conquest or status, but on clarity, on depth, on something that could not be trained or forced. She reached behind the wall panel and pulled out the beacon. The small metal disc blinked once, waiting for her next move. She held it in her hand, her thumb over the command. The signal she had prepared was ready. One press, and the Corvian scout ship would receive her final report. Her people expected one thing: that she would mark the outpost as weak, that she would open the door for the fleet. Instead, she stood frozen in the moment. Outside the control room, Ryan received a silent message. The scout ship had just sent a query, not a threat, not a code of attack, just a simple request for confirmation. Ryan did not respond. He waited. He trusted the moment. Back in her room, Sarai closed her eyes. She took a breath. Long, quiet, heavy. Then she pressed the beacon. The signal went out. Encrypted, brief, clear. Inside the Corvian ship, the officers received it. They read the words written not in fear, not in shame, but in truth. Target: not viable human defense. Resilient commander. Strong culture. Disciplined. Recommendation: stand down. Ryan received the echo of the signal from his hidden monitors. He read it twice, then again, and finally leaned back in his chair. Not a victory, not a surrender, something else, something more rare and more powerful: mutual recognition. The Corvian ship turned silently and moved away from the moon. Its engines hummed as it drifted beyond the scanner's range. No weapons were fired, no threats were made. It simply left. Hours past the outpost returned to its rhythm. The crew walked lighter, spoke louder, laughed again. But Ryan remained quiet. He knew what had just happened was more than a lucky escape. It was a turning point, a moment few would understand later. That night, Sarai stood at the landing pad, her ship prepared and waiting. She wore no armor, only a simple travel suit, no weapons, no Masquerian walked toward her alone. They stood face to face under the stars that had watched them from the beginning. "You could have destroyed us," he said, or Trajerai nodded once. "You could have feared me, or attacked, but we did not know. You stood, you listened, you waited, and so did I. What will you tell them?" Ryan asked. "The truth," she replied, "and I hope they are wise enough to hear it." She turned and stepped toward her ship. The doors hissed open. She paused at the threshold and looked back. "You taught me something, without shouting, without fire, without breaking me, and I will not forget." Then she entered, and the ship rose into the sky, leaving behind only silence and the start of something new. The sky above Outpost Delta 7 was quiet again. No shadow ships hid behind moons. No strange signals danced through the stars. Only silence remained. But silence does not always mean peace. Sometimes it means change. Sometimes it means something deeper is growing where noise once ruled. Ryan Howell stood in the command center, with his hands behind his back. The crew around him moved with quiet purpose, their eyes sharper, their steps more confident. They had not fought a war, but they had faced one, and they had not fallen. The Corvian ship had vanished into the void without a trace. No message, no signal, just absence. And with it came a question that lingered in every mind: what comes next? So I had left without ceremony, no farewell broadcast, no gifts exchanged, no flags lowered or raised, only words few and final. Ryan remembered them as he watched the stars stretch across the main view screen. He had not reported everything to Earth Command. Some things could not be explained, not with data, not with protocol, only with experience. He sent a brief message back to Earth: encounter, resolve, no threat remains. Recommend diplomatic monitoring. They would ask questions, they always did, but some answers had to be lived, not written out. Delta 7 carried on, systems were checked, defense protocols updated, logs reviewed and sealed. But within the crew, a subtle shift had taken place. They no longer saw themselves as a forgotten post in deep space. They saw themselves as guardians of a line that others might one day try to cross. Ryan walked the halls in the early hours, when the lights were dim and the noise was low. He passed the training rooms, where soldiers moved with more focus, He passed the labs, where engineers whispered about improvements. He passed the garden dome, where silence grew between green life and gentle light. He entered the observation deck, where the stars poured in like silver rivers. He sat alone, and breathy thought about strength, about the kind that did not shout, about the kind that held still, that listened, that waited, that chose to stand when it was easier to kneel. Sarai had taught him something too, though she never meant to. She had come with the fire of her people, with pride like armor, with purpose like a blade, but in the end, she had seen something different. And she had not looked away somewhere far beyond the stars. Her ship would reach the Corvian worlds. Her report would be read. Her words considered. Some might call her weak, some might call her traitor, but others would understand the lesson was not about fear. It was about measure. About meeting eyes without flinching. About knowing when not to strike. Weeks passed. Then months. No Corvian fleet came. No whispers of invasion reached. The outpost trade routes reopened. Scout ships passed with neutral signals. And still no one spoke of what had happened in the quiet between two warriors. Then one day, a package arrived. No return signal, no sender code, just coordinates burned into. The shelling side was a single item, a stone carved with Corvian symbols. Simple, clean, precise. Ryan held it in his hands. As the crew gathered, he read the inscription slowly. Not weakness, not fear, but wisdom. The room fell silent. No orders were given, no speeches made. Only a quiet sense that something larger than the outpost had shifted. Ryan placed the stone in the central hall where all could see. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that strength comes in many forms, that not all battles are fought with weapons, that not every enemy remains one forever. Saray's name was never entered into the logs. No official report carried her face, but her presence lingered like a shadow that had once protected, rather than threatened. Some of the younger crew whispered stories of an alien girl with silver eyes who came to test them, and left changed. Of a commander who met her with calm and never blinked. The story passed from voice to voice, not always the same, not always complete, but always remembered on. So Outpost Delta 7 became more than a colony, more than a checkpoint. It became a place where a lesson was born, not written in blood, but etched in silence, in restraint, in trust, and among the stars that lesson traveled farther than any signal ever could.